I'm Yitzhak Berger. I teach Hebrew at Risha. Parashat Emor contains a reference to all of the holidays that are on the Jewish calendar. And among them is the holiday of Sukkot, where we're famously told that the reason for sitting in a sukkah is so that the generations of Jews should know that Basukot hoshavti et b'nei Yisrael b'hotzi'i otam me'eretz Mitzrayim, that God housed the Israelites in Sukkot when he took them out of Egypt. It's debated as to whether those Sukkot are actual huts, as we refer to as sukkah, or the clouds of glory that protected the Israelites. But one way or the other, this symbolizes the protection, the feeling of connectedness that the Israelites feel with God, something that they accomplish after the giving of the Torah. After the giving of the Torah on Shavuot, there's a striving to achieve, by following the rules of the Torah, that connection that's symbolized by the Sukkot. But interestingly, the term that's used is the Sukkot that I housed the Israelites in, Behotzi'i otam me'eretz Mitzrayim, when I took them out of Egypt, which doesn't quite sound like it's referring to the sojourn through the wilderness for 40 years. And in fact, if one looks carefully at the moment of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the moment the Israelites get out of Egypt, the text tells us that they went from Ramses, Sukkota, from Ramses, the city in Egypt, to a city called Sukkot, one of multiple cities called Sukkot in the ancient period, presumably because of the huts, the Sukkot, that populated the area, having been built for animals or for people. So when the Israelites get out of Egypt, they are right then and there in Sukkot. And it's really right at that moment that they're under the protection of God. It sounds as though that's perhaps the moment that we're trying to recapture. In fact, the Radak, one of the commentaries on the Tanakh, primarily on Nevi'im and Ketuvim, cites from his father, a famous grammarian, and we have the original source in one of the grammatical works of the father of the Radak, that indeed we sit in Sukkot because of that moment, because Behotzi'i otam me'eretz Mitzrayim, when God took us out of Egypt, we came to the place called Sukkot. But I would imagine that he means that this has something to do with the temporary dwellings that the Israelites were in right away and the connectedness that they felt with God at that moment. Because that moment was unique. The Israelites come out of Egypt, and as Chazal tell us, they're steeped in 49 levels of tumah, of impurity. They're in no shape to be able to receive the Torah. They need to go through the Sfirat HaOmer, right, to the counting of the Omer, counting 49 days, getting out of a level of impurity each day till they're in a state of sanctity where they'll be able to receive the Torah. They're in no position to bring the Korban Pesach. They're in no position to infuse the first Pesach with any sanctity. That first moment was sanctity that was imposed from above. That first moment was God himself lifting the Israelites up, providing a paradigmatic model for the sanctity that we're to strive for later on. And that idyllic time, the Sukkot that the Israelites were in the moment they left Egypt, that endures for that first week until the moment of Kriyat Yam Suf, when they cross Yam Suf and get into the wilderness itself. At that moment when we're told that everyone who went through the sea, when it split, achieved a level of prophecy that was greater than that achieved by Yechezkel when he had the most majestic of visions. And if we can suggest that the meaningfulness of the place name Sukkot is really not limited to that one instance, we might suggest that when the Torah tells us, just as the Israelites are approaching Yam Suf, Vayachanu be'etam asher b'ktzei hamidbar, that in fact what it's telling us is that at that moment when they reached Yam Suf, they settled into the highest level of sanctity imposed by God upon them that they were ever to achieve until they were to recapture it, if they would succeed in doing so much later. Because the word etam appears just in one other context in the Bible, and that is in Psalm 19, where after the psalm begins its latter half describing that Torat Hashem Tamimah, the Torah of God is tamim, it's wholesome. The psalm ends that by following that Torah as etam, it's only then that the person will achieve the level of tamimut, of wholesomeness, and be free of iniquity. That very first week after Yetziat Mitzrayim, an idyllic time when sanctity was imposed from above, and it's a paradigm for the Israelites to strive to. So right before Kriyat Yam Suf, they had settled into etam, they had settled into tamimut, to wholesomeness, asher b'ktzei hamidbar, but they were on the edge of the wilderness, and as soon as they get through the sea, is when they enter into that wilderness, and they're on their own. They're ready to start striving to achieving through their own initiative the standing that they were able to witness and experience during that first week of Yetziat Mitzrayim. After 49 days of Sfirat HaOmer, they're then able to achieve a basic level of sanctity to receive the Torah. But it's only by means of the observance of the Torah, in the years in the wilderness and beyond, that they would be able to try to recapture that period of sanctity that they experienced in that very special way at the moment of Yetziat Mitzrayim, V'hotzi'i otam me'eretz Mitzrayim. Shabbat Shalom.